Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Souls Graduate Student Writing Center. Tonight's topic is hit the gas, stop stalling and start writing. And we have about an hour and 15 minutes, and we can go through some of the best strategies for getting started on a writing project when you don't necessarily feel inspired or know where to start. And so one thing that I wanted to do with everybody is to have them put in the chat box one word that describes how they feel about writing. Sometimes people put in, I feel frustrated or anxious or stuck. Those aren't uncommon reactions. Some people write, I enjoy writing, but it can be challenging at times, the getting started part, and sometimes we get in our own way. And so what I want to do is have an opportunity to share with you some of the best practices we know for getting started on the writing process. So let me share my screen and walk you through some of these ideas we have. So I am Heather Herrera. I'm the Assistant Dean of Assessment and Accreditation at the School of Leadership and Education Sciences. And I also head the Souls Graduate Student Writing Center. I have put together today's presentation with 3 objectives in mind. See if I can get this to go into slideshow mode. That's better. Okay. Here we are, the 3 objectives. So the first objective is to make it possible that everybody walks away from the workshop being able to articulate the nature of the writing process. What does it mean when we say the writing process? And it means different things to different people. But in terms of how I can help move you from being in a place where you're stuck to actually producing a product, we're going to talk about the writing process. And the other objective is to help students develop skills to initiate a writing project. And those are very specific techniques that I'm going to go over later. And hopefully, if time allows, we'll be able to translate some of your ideas to an outline for an assignment that you have coming up. Okay, let's jump into it. So, what is the writing process? I'd like you to take 90 seconds and write down what you know about the writing process. So, what do you understand the writing process involves? How does the writing process work? How do you approach writing? Just everything that you think of when somebody says you have a writing assignment due. What are the stages that you go through? And if it helps you, you can draw a picture if that helps as well. So compare what you have to the writing process that people such as myself think of when we talk about the writing process. How many categories did you have when you wrote down your process? How many stages did you have? Did you have stages? What categories did you break your process down into? The traditional categories that we talk about when we're teaching writing is pre-writing, planning, drafting, reflection, peer tutor review, revision, additional research or idea generation, editing, and proofreading. I don't know if you showed any sequence in your process, but if you did, was it a linear sequence? Meaning first you had pre-writing and then planning and then drafting and then editing and proofreading? Sometimes we see that. What you see here is that, what is the shape that you're looking at? It's a circle, right? So what we're suggesting in the practice of writing is that writing it's circular, it's iterative, it's recursive. What do I mean? So it doesn't usually, hardly for anybody, go in a linear fashion, beginning to end. Typically what happens is it will go forward and it'll go back and it'll go forward in a whole circle and go back again and so forth. So let's walk through it. So when we talk about pre-writing, we're talking about having something to say, coming up with the ideas, coming up with your topic, and what are you going to say about your topic. And usually this process involves, going back through your notes, listening to lectures, looking at other work, maybe doing a literature review of work about your topic. And then, it can involve what we're going to discuss in a bit, which is free writing and brainstorming. And then there's planning that's involved. So let's say you've come up with an angle on an assignment and you have a general sense of what it is that you want to cover. We will talk today about specific techniques such as mind mapping, clustering, listing, outlining, as part of the planning stages of the writing process. So we're really just going to focus on these two, possibly three categories here. Drafting is, just those initial messy, dirty drafts. It's the purpose. You be a friend to yourself and allow yourself to draft. This is where you get to play with ideas. You get to develop them. You get to move them around. You want to give yourself drafting opportunities. Okay. Again, this is a process. There are stages. So drafting is a really critical one. So I don't want people to think, oh, I just go from having ideas and an outline and then I go into writing and editing and proofreading. No, it doesn't happen like that. We have built into our model that we use reflection, meaning getting a little distance between those original ideas, because not every first idea you get is a great idea. And there's an expression in writing about killing your darlings. Sometimes the first ideas are not the best ideas and you have to be willing to let them go. Or the main idea that you have has evolved so that some of those other ideas you attach to it no longer serve a purpose and you need to let them go. But you might not realize that if you don't give yourself a little distance from the work. So we build in reflection, which means that your writing process can't involve waiting till the last minute because you won't have reflection time. Something else that we build into the model is peer or tutor review. We would say, to talk with someone else in your program, talk to a faculty member, contact the SOL's writing coach and go through the draft with the writing coach. You can do a one-on-one. You can submit it for their review. You can do a one-on-one with them, get their thoughts back on the content and the direction and the organization. Not on the nitty-gritty stuff around grammar and punctuation, because it's too soon for that. What you want to focus on are the content of the of the ideas. Get that kind of feedback from people. See if your work is comprehensive enough. See if the logic falls together. Um, so then you will theoretically, you will go back, either you go back into drafting because you got some really helpful feedback, and you're going to go back into drafting and expanding your ideas or adding new ideas or taking out some ideas and then moving some passages around. And then you will, that feeds naturally into maybe more feedback or revision. Where you're just clarifying your ideas and you're working on the structure of the text. So, with good writing, there is a coherence where um, the ideas just fall together in a way that move the reader through the work so that they can follow whatever point, whatever logic, whatever position you are presenting to them. They don't scratch their head. They're not confused. They don't wonder what's missing. Um, and this is where we're doing that kind of work in revision. I like to think of it as moving the furniture around. You're moving the furniture around. What is the best path through this room? What's the most aesthetically pleasing way to arrange this room? So you want to be thinking in those terms now because you have developed your ideas. Although in the revision stage, as you can see, you can make some discoveries. Good writers do, because again, writing is recursive. So you go around the circle and it's iterative, meaning you might just fold in within the circle. You don't have to do the whole circle. You might just reflect and draft and then go through the circle. But you allow this to happen. This is part of the process. If this isn't happening when you're writing, I'm suspecting that something is off. um, so with the revision, you can go into maybe just a drafting phase, or in some cases, and this is so common, especially in doctoral programs, you go back to the stacks. You have to do additional research. You have to do additional idea generation because you might uncover something. And so you go back, and this is where that recursive part of the writing happens, where you're back in the process. You're back in there with doing mind mapping and organizing the ideas and trying to organize how they should flow, and you then pause and take some time off and get some feedback to make sure you're still headed in the right direction. Depending on the outcome of that kind of feedback, you're back to drafting or you're in revision. And hopefully now you're exiting, at least for me, this is typically what happens. Then I begin to take the off ramp. And the off ramp is when you can start to pay attention to editing and proofreading and what we call the surface level features of the writing. If you do too much of the surface feature writing at the beginning, you get very attached to those words because you spend a lot of time on them. And so the recommendation is to wait until you're close to done to focus on spelling, punctuation, grammar, things like that. So what are the main takeaways? The main takeaways are that writing happens in phases. And that it is recursive, meaning you can go through the whole loop, or it's iterative, or it's iterative, meaning, you just fall back one step, not the whole circle, but you fold in on the process and you come out and you continue to move forward and make progress. And writing improves with practice. So the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more second nature it becomes to you. And the things that you learn around those surface level issues go away because you're no longer making comma splices. You're no longer, using passive voice or whatever those other issues were, because you've done this so much that you've acquired those skills. So it gets easier, it gets better. So let's talk about what are the techniques. So techniques. Um, we call these the invention strategies, the idea generating invention strategies. And the four that I want to really go over: free writing, listing, clustering, mind mapping. Clustering and mind mapping are very closely related, so kind of talk about them in tandem. But they also are related to the phases of writing, which we just discussed, meaning pre-writing, planning, drafting. Now, free writing. Um, you know, people practice this in different ways, but it's actually um, a, a established practice in the field of composition and rhetoric with specific rules, even though it's called free writing. And sometimes people don't acknowledge that there are rules, but I'm going to go over what the actual rules are for free writing. But essentially, it's a process for generating ideas and text by continuously writing for several minutes without pausing to read what you have written. So it's even more established than that. Um, the the purpose behind it is not only just that you're just writing freely because you haven't looked at the work to edit it or pause or think. It's you're freeing your mind. And sometimes you want to free your mind to initiate the bigger writing. Maybe there are things going on in your life that are just interfering with your ability to concentrate and focus on the assignment. And the purpose behind free writing, as designed by Peter Elbow, is to get you to access almost your subconscious level of thinking. So, what Peter Elbow says is that free writing exploits what the mind can do with language and thinking when you can't plan or rehearse your words in your head before you write them. So that's really key there. You're not thinking and then writing, you're just writing. And it takes a while to kind of get comfortable with being able to do that. And you you are supposed to be unguarded and not editing yourself. What Peter Abel says is that free writing exploits the mind's ability to come up with unexpected thoughts and syntax with energy and life. So uh, essentially what you do is you set a timer, 10 to 20 minutes. You shouldn't do more than 20 minutes and you shouldn't do less than 10. Set a timer, and it works best, I have found, in teaching and in doing it myself, when you have a pen and paper. But you can type too, though I think the processing is a little bit different because it's just a different muscle memory you're tapping into. But if you're typing versus writing by hand, but what you do is you set that timer and you just write. And it doesn't have to be about your assignment. It can be, and we can talk about that. But what you really do is you just set your mind free. And whatever comes into your mind, you just free associate and you just write. You just write, just write, just download everything that's crossing your mind. And you just keep your hand moving. Even if you're just writing the same word over and over again, even if you're writing, I can't think of what to write, I can't think, it doesn't matter. You're just, whatever comes into your head, because your mind cannot stay on, I can't think of what to write for 10 minutes, I guarantee you. Eventually, thoughts are going to come into your mind. Maybe it will be about what you had for lunch or that you forgot something or whatever it is, just let it out. Just keep the pen or pencil or the typing happening. When the timer stops, that's when you stop. So you, if you managed to get through those 10 minutes. You didn't edit yourself. You didn't go back and write something. You don't care that you misspelled something. You don't care about your punctuation. Um, you just wrote. And then the practice is to go back and read what you wrote. I read through it one time, and then I read through it another time, and I circle, or if I have a highlighter, I highlight things that are jumping out at me. Um, and you can use those words to start another session. And you should repeat this, do this a few times. This is really helpful, especially when you don't feel like you can get started on writing. Because if you do this 3 times, that's only 30 minutes. If you do that 3 times, you will get to a place where before you know it, you are writing. And just as I said, the muscle memory activity of it will help get you moving. The other thing is that if there were things that were on your mind and you've written them and sort of just maybe you put them down on the page and you can let go of them, then maybe you will have the ability to shift your focus specifically to the writing assignment. Um, in which case, what you can do is, set your timer and pick, choose something related to the topic that you want to write and just unburden yourself, everything on your mind about that topic, even if it is all of the anxiety you have about having to write on that particular topic or to do this particular assignment. Write it, just put it all out there, put it all out there. You'll be surprised at how after 30 minutes of doing this, you will feel lighter and you will feel more prepared to then continue on with the writing. So that, in a nutshell, your takeaways are, if you're practicing free writing, don't stop writing. Do not edit yourself. Don't judge yourself. Write whatever comes to your mind, whatever comes at your mind. You don't have to share this with anyone. Um, and repeat the process until you have something to start an outline with, or you've reached a point where you feel like I'm feeling like whatever was interfering with my concentration or my uh, level of engagement with this is dissipating, and I can now shift into doing the writing for that particular assignment in a more focused way. So techniques to get you into that stage, if you are maybe you are excited and you're ready to jump into the writing assignment, but you not quite sure where to start. No. um, or maybe you're short on time and you don't really have a lot of time to engage in too much open-ended pre-writing. So you can start with something like listing. Um, in this, you can do listing in many ways, but I wanted to just concentrate on one that I know can yield the most results. So that would be when you use just questions like what, when, where, who, how, why, could, and should. Um, and so what does that look like? Well, let's say you're working on something that has to do with socioeconomic status and health disparities. You could come up with a list of questions. And I think sometimes just coming up with the list of questions can lead you in a direction. If that doesn't work, then try to answer the questions. So what am I saying? Here's an example. The topic has to do with socioeconomic status and health disparities. Let's say the assignment was write a 6-page paper on socioeconomic status and health disparities in urban settings. Well, how do I get started with that? So maybe you just start with a what question. What? And very typically, what impact, right? So those research questions are usually having to look at some kind of relationship or correlation. So what impact does socioeconomic status have on health disparities in urban settings? Okay, that's one question. When does socioeconomic status impact health disparities in urban settings? Oh, maybe that's interesting. Maybe that's what I want to look at. Where does socioeconomic status impact health disparities the most? Who? Maybe you really want to look at a particular population, and maybe you want to know who's most impacted, or maybe you want to know who's least impacted. Or maybe you are a person who wants to understand how something happens. And so you want to look at that. So you can expand this and look at why, would, should, could questions. And again, the exercise is really about coming up with the questions and seeing if it stirs anything in you. But then the other thing you can do is try to answer these questions, as many of them as you can, and it will demonstrate to you how much you know, and it could then shape an argument that you want to make, or shape a thesis that you're ready to support. And doing the answering of the questions will also give you subtopics that you can then move around, and you can start to develop an outline of supporting ideas for the argument that you want to make. So that's one of those takeaways, and or one of the strategies for getting started, which the takeaways are, questions are your friends. Use questions to gain insight and find direction in your writing. And there's no such thing as a bad question when it comes to pre-writing. So ask yourself lots of questions and see how much you know, and where there's a gap, maybe you can't answer, who is impacted when it comes to socioeconomic status and health disparities. And that will take you back to the sex, and you have to look at some research on it. So the questions raise what you know and raise what you don't know, and you need to go and find out. The next technique, this is clustering and mind mapping. And I said they're kind of related. They're both visual techniques, and they can be used as organizational techniques as well. So they're kind of elevating the getting started strategies. So they are a way of generating and connecting ideas visually. So I'll show you what I mean in a second, those of you who aren't familiar. And it's useful for showing you how ideas relate to one another. Also useful for developing subtopics. So let's take a look, because it's better to get how this works. So you first of all, you write your topic in the middle of the paper. So whatever your topic is, you just put it right there. And then on that blank piece of paper, write down ideas that are related to it, right? So first you have your main idea, and then you have ideas that relate to it. And then write down examples or facts or details. Okay, so those are smaller pieces of the puzzle, smaller pieces, right? These are discrete, they're more discrete. It's an example. So if you were talking about socioeconomic status, and you were saying, well, what are ideas related to that? Disparities and socioeconomic status. Well, some of the disparities we know exist are education, health, environmental impacts. Well, let's start with that, right? So we have our main topic, which is about the disparities in socioeconomic status in the United States, say. And then you have those other things like housing and education and health and environment, meaning like, access to fresh and clean water and exposure to pollution, things like that. So those are ideas that are related. And then examples, facts, details. These are smaller, more discrete things. So an example might be if we were talking about, let's say, education. Um, you might know that, you might give us an example or some facts. People with a lower socioeconomic status are only 25% um, attend a 4-year institution. I made that up, but that's what I'm saying when I say you want something much smaller. So try to refine it. Come up with some more details, maybe the piece around the environment, people who are living below the poverty line are often exposed, 80% more exposure to environmental pollution. Um, okay, that's another one of those discrete things. So you just do this though. You just try to write down everything you know about your topic, put it on the piece of paper randomly, just randomly as these ideas are coming to you, as you flip through your notes, just plug on that piece of paper these things. And then we will, after you've exhausted what you think you know about the topic, then we can talk about the clustering part of this. So here's a model. As you can see in the center in bold, soft drinks was the topic. And then the person came up with, what are the ideas that come to mind when he or she thought about soft drinks? Well, health effects, marketing, manufacturing. They seem to be main ideas. And then branching off of that, and then, so now after you have your random words on the page, you start to create branches showing relationships between these words. So we had soft drinks here, and then health effects. And off of health effects, specific examples are obesity, diabetes, I guess drinking soft drinks instead of drinking milk or juice. Tooth decay is a health effect. Nervousness is a health effect. And so you start to see, okay, so this could be a subtopic. Sorry, this could be a subtopic with these as part of what you use to elaborate on the idea. If you're making a case that soft drinks have negative health effects. And the same thing goes here. So, maybe something about this had to do with marketing. Marketing to whom? Well, that's what the target groups are. Marketing where? The US and foreign markets. And then this is the when, the past and the present. So, and you can see that this is marketing is one of the subtopic ideas that had other subtopics related to it. But when these ideas came out of the writer, they might have just written down soft drinks and kids and diabetes and obesity and artificial sweeteners. You think about diabetes, and then you think about artificial sweeteners, then you think about sugar, and then you think about caffeine, then you think about nervousness. So when the words were coming, the free association of words, there was no organization. The organization came from the reflection of looking at this later and then tying with the branches. How are these things related? Which then can become an outline for you. So that's the clustering technique. And this is where we talk about mind maps, and there's basic and then there's a more complex, and again, you can do something where you're just looking at um, the main idea, which you put in the center. So you could start off with mind maps. You could start off with a graphic, and there are lots of, if you look online, search mind maps, there are lots and lots and lots of graphics. So you can start off with a graphic in a mind map, and you put your main idea in, and then, you think about that as a hub, and then spokes off of the hub are all of these different related ideas. So we have mental health, physical health, employability, social service, eligibility, chemical dependency, chronic or temporary education, or housing. If I had to ask you, what do you think this paper is about? Well, bet I bet some of you would come up with, this has to do with homelessness. And you'd be right. So, this is a paper about what is a comprehensive approach to addressing homelessness. So, to this writer, these are the items that need to be addressed to combat homelessness. And so, the next stage for the writer is to think about what are those specific things, um, and then think about what order do these ideas go in. And that is where a more complex mind map can be of service. So here you can work off of, let's say you did something like this. You've taken this, now you've got your main idea here, you identified the spokes, the main spokes in this case, manufacturing, marketing, health effects. Those are the main three spokes coming off of the hub, which is soft drinks. From that, you can create something that looks like this. If you were doing soft drinks, you would only have three subtopics. But here, so you have, let's say you're doing something on food deserts. And I have the definition of food deserts over here, an urban area in which it's difficult to buy affordable or good quality fresh food. And you have one idea here. So perhaps the first thing you want to do is is to present to your reader the definition of what it is you're talking about. And this is pretty common for academic writing in general, that there is a section where you need to provide a definition of your terms. But included in that, maybe, you want to present, some of the important research that's happened on food deserts. Maybe, you want to share what kind of communication is, most notable when it comes to writing about food deserts. And maybe you have some statistics that you want to present. So these little icons are placeholders for those things. So then you move on to your second main idea, which would be locations, right? And then whatever specific details about locations you want to provide. And then maybe your third idea has to do with the populations who live in food deserts, right? And what is that? What are the details that support that? What are the facts? What are specific examples you can provide? And then let's say the fourth main idea in this piece is the impact on health, the impact that food deserts have on health. And, when you have this chart here, so perhaps you have some data, you've mapped out, you can show on a map where people have a higher rate of, illness versus not illness. And if you notice here, so it goes from food deserts to 1 and 2, and then it goes into another topic, and then to 3 and 4. And sometimes that's what happens, right? You have one level of ideas, 1 and 2, 1 being the definition, 2 being locations. Now, 1 and 2, maybe we would say like this is more background, more context, 1 and 2 are like the context level. And then we're going to go into what we'll say is the impact, human impact level. And the human impact level is going to be the populations who are living with food deserts and the impact that those food deserts have on them. Okay. And so in that way, you're going from this level, which is context or background, and that's more of a general level, down to a deeper level, which is 3 and 4. And so in that way, that's how you're organizing the work using the mind map. So what you should do is take 10 minutes and try one of these techniques. Try free writing or listing or clustering or mind mapping. Turn off your mic and your video and spend 10 minutes on that particular strategy. And then stop and review your work for 2 minutes and locate some main ideas in the work. And then set your timer again and take 5 minutes and do a mind map. Try to produce something perhaps like this, or like this, meaning that you just put down the main idea and then take 3 minutes and write every single thing you associate with your topic, and then spend 2 minutes drawing the branches. So I'll give you some time to do that, and then we will come back together. So I hope that you had a productive session with your invention strategies. Thank you for attending this workshop, and you can visit the Souls Graduate Student Writing Center to view all of our past workshops there as well. So thank you very much and hope to see you at a future workshop.